Welcome back. So we have the login component and the auth service both ready now, and we are going to move code for this lesson. We're just going to move responsibility from this login component, because that shouldn't know about users. It should know about services on how to log in. It should just know that somehow I get some information about how we can log in, the username and the password, or the email and the password, whatever we decide to use. And from that, we can actually send that onwards down to a service that then knows how to log in. That's the goal of it. So we're going to just move information from the login component, like users. It shouldn't know anything about users. So I'm going to copy that or cut that and paste it inside the auth service. And remember, now we're only one folder out again. So I need to only go .users and then the user, I find it, my user file right there. I also grab this users because the fake users that we are building, they should also belong to the service now, because they shouldn't even be there. But they're mocking, we are just mocking a service right now, faking a service. So the creation of the users will also be moved into the constructor down here. Great. What else do we do? If you scroll down, this is the actual function for logging in that we made inside the login component. Now, some of this will stay, so I'll copy it. I won't delete it from here. Some of it will stay, but most of it will be moved down to the auth service, and I just paste the login here. So now, instead of actually getting a user, I want to get a username and a password, like this. Now, the username can be an email. Nobody says it couldn't be an email, so I'll just keep it as username, because then it can be both a normal name and also an email, depending on what you want to write. I changed these two because the user is not available anymore. Before I had user up here, but now it's actually changed to user name directly and password directly. So we actually still make the check if the user is available for us. We're not going to send anything like this back. We're not going to set the login error directly or reroute, because that's not the job for the service. That's actually, or it could be, but not in our case. It's not the job for the service, and neither is it to set a login error here. We just want to do a very simple thing. We want to say, if you actually find a user, then return that user. So I'll do return, and I'll say I want to return inside the user accepted, I want to return the first user that it actually finds if there is a user. And if nothing is here, I'll return null, like this. And then I want to kind of explain the login here, what we're actually returning. I'm going to return a user, right? So this is how you explain to the system what you will send back from a function. You do a colon, and then you write what you're going to return back. And remember, if you do that, you have to add a return statement, or you'll actually get an error saying you are not returning anything. So let me just try and remove these, and you'll actually be told, notice you're not returning anything. That's a bad thing, so you have to tell me what we should return. So now when I log in, I'm going to check the username and the password still, like I always did. But instead of returning an error, I'm actually just returning the user, if there is one, or null if there is no user. The next step is going back to the code inside the login component and then change that around. So what we're going to do is, instead of actually doing the actual check here ourselves, we're going to give that responsibility to a service. So we need to get the service in here. Now we do that by actually doing private, giving it a name, and I'll call it auth service. And I'll add the type of the service. It's an auth service, like this. As soon as I put this in my, because I'm using WebStorm, it automatically puts in the import here. But if you didn't put that in, if you get a red mark here, remember to import the auth service from the actual package where it's in. So now I can ask the auth service to figure out if the user is logged in. So I'll make a logged in user here as a variable. And that'll be auth service. Oh, you need to put the this in front of auth service. I always forget that. And then you make it login with the actual user from the outside. Dot username. There we go. And the user's password. So again, I'm just moving the responsibility here, nothing else. So now luckily, if I find a user, if something comes back here, if it's not null, then I just want to do what we did before. Else I want to put in an error. So that's all I had to change here. But now notice the responsibility of users and the responsibility of how to log in is put inside the auth service, and we'll change that later. So that's all I had to do. Let's see if the application is still running. And notice I get an error. That was expected, because I'm not adding a provider yet for the auth service. Let me just show you this error, because you might get this when you work with services. No provider for auth service. You need to explain inside a module or component that you need to use a service. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going down to our app module TS file, and here, there in the bottom of this, there's actually one called providers. And here I'm going to add my newly created auth service. There we go. Again, as soon as you put it in, you need to remember the import. If it don't do it automatically, my tool is doing that, so I don't have to do it. But you might need to add that manually. That should be it. Let's see if it works now. We're up and running again. Try and go to the sign-in page. Let's just try and zoom a bit. Whoops, that wasn't what I wanted. Try and zoom a bit to see like it did look before. Everything seems to be working fine. So we're back to the same position as before, but we removed responsibility from the login component down to the auth service, and we're still up and running. And now we have a service, so I can log in from anywhere inside my tool. See you in the next lesson where we'll play around with this even more.